Would you marry and have kids with your brother-in-law? 2 ways you are vulnerable in 2019. Ladies, so how about the idea of marrying your brother-in-law right now? Wouldn't that be awkward? And fellas, imagine you're on your deathbed, dying of some undiscovered disease, not only without ever having kids to pass your legacy, but also knowing that your whole life is about to be had by your brother. That crap is intense. That's like number 2 on the list of scary Bible stories. That's right under my man Lazarus, just straight up waking up from the dead. I mean, something like that simply cannot happen today. People will go into full DEFCON 5 or 1, I don't know, whichever DEFCON means, holy crap, The Walking Dead was right. Somebody call all the Ricks and Corals. And only the true Walking Dead fans will get that name play. Alright, what's the point? Well, the point is to talk about the 2 ways you are vulnerable in your life right now. But first, picture this. Pastor Delores blessed the church with a fantastic image of Robert passing away and her having to marry his brother and have kids with him. Yeah. No. But, as horrible as that sounds, Pastor Delores has a point. Israelites in Deuteronomy 25:5 for your reference, practice this form of legacy preservation. If the husband died without making a baby, the wife would marry the husband's brother. It seems weird to us now, but that's just what they did. Nevertheless, this is a perfect example to explain the Israelites' vulnerabilities as we start with the first way you are vulnerable right now. Way number 1, vulnerable to God. The previously mentioned example does a great job representing the first way you are vulnerable. Men were worried about dying without leaving a legacy via offspring. Women were equally concerned about not having support after the husband passed away. Although no solution seemed practical, God provided the Israelites the marry your brother-in-law strategy, which protected women when their husbands died, all while securing the man's legacy. The point Pastor Delores is making here is that the men and women were protected because they remained vulnerable to God. That implies that no women lacked familial support, and the men weren't dying without leaving a legacy. Those were generally difficult times in which to live, but God had their backs. So what about us now? You know the famous saying, let go and let God? Very catchy, but it's so deep. This statement alone elucidates this entire section. It essentially says, be vulnerable to God. When you're having a hard time, do what you can, then pass the ball to Him. Even still, you're probably thinking of a time you couldn't pay your bills for the month. You remember a time when you didn't get that job you needed. You might even be recalling a time you had a miscarriage and lost both your twin babies. And that's okay. Those were very vulnerable times for you. I understand. However, that means that we have to hold each other as brothers and sisters, God's children. This idea brings us to the second way Pastor Delores said people could be vulnerable. Way number 2, vulnerable to one another. Okay, that last example was very specific. I wish it were actually random, but my wife and I, barely a couple months ago as of this blog, lost our twin baby boy and girl before they even had a chance to breathe. At that time, ugly and beautiful things were happening simultaneously, which caused even more uncertainty. On top of questioned faith, there was pain, arguments, annoying calls and texts. You name it, it happened. However, before the babies died, I called all my family who I knew were emotionally invested in our relationship. Usually, I'm the type to wait and see how things play out before talking. But not this time. Before they died, I needed to tell people. I wanted to secure as many prayers as possible. And after that happened, I needed people to pray for V's and my mental health. I didn't know how we were going to make it through this one. However, we found a way to get back to being open to each other. I know that being vulnerable with others and each other saved us. Once we recovered the habit of talking about everything again, the healing began. It didn't matter how bad the pain was or how long we suffered. We forced ourselves to do it together or bust. That was our only option, or else we would meet destruction. I wasn't having none of that. Azan and Zona would have been for nothing. So how does this apply to you? Well, you need to be vulnerable to your fellow man. Someone needs you, and you need someone. Pastor Delores' message hit home for me in several ways, but this is the biggest one. You have to be vulnerable. Shutting off people isn't safe. It just hurts more than you can surmise. But here is the apparent part that people neglect to understand. Everybody is hurting. Everybody is suffering. Do you think you're the only person in the entire world with an overdue light bill? Do you believe that nobody else knows what it's like to contemplate divorce? In my eyes, nobody is not hurting. And if they are not hurting, they're probably dead. You must acknowledge that your brothers and sisters are going through it too. Don't judge. Be a friend. Delores said something that was so dope near the end of her sermon. She talked about how we see people when they are suffering. Sometimes we try to judge their situation and create scenarios that we think would be solutions, when the truth is, they just need a friend. We don't need to overthink it. We just need to love on one another. Here's a nugget for you. Stay vulnerable even if you feel empty inside. The hole in your heart will stay empty if you keep it covered. Open it up, and the love of your friends, your family, and God will fill it. Now, here's one bonus way you can be vulnerable right now. Be vulnerable on the Facebook page. Hey, cue applause sound here. If you can recall a moment of vulnerability you wouldn't mind sharing with the rest of the Kogapos here, please do. I'm sure your story can help us understand vulnerability and the way to react in vulnerable situations. And while you're at it, follow and like the Facebook page to stay updated on all things Blythewood Kogap. Visit us at Blythewood Kogap to see a live sermon from the famous Pastor Delores. Our address is on our website. Thanks for stopping by to read this chapter of Behind the Pastor. So until next time, Kogapos, may peace be with you. Josh the drummer. Hey, before you go, Pastor Delores has a quick announcement. Ditto, her newest sermon series, starts this weekend at Kogap Blythewood. It's going to be a reflection on how we as Christians should practice the same things that Jesus would. I mean, that is discipleship, right? Anyway, come this Sunday at 11 so you don't miss it. Of course, I'll be giving a recap, but it's nothing like hearing it in person. See you there.